You're a new project manager and your stakeholder is not delivering on the task and or I should say task. Now, what are you going to do about it? Hey family, if you're new to the channel, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, listen, that just simply means Ed. I have an 8-point framework, and these 8 points, my goal, my mission is to unpack today's title, which is entitled How to Deal with a Stakeholder, or I should say stakeholders, that is not delivering on their part of the project. Again, how to deal with stakeholders or stakeholders with an S that is not delivering on their part of the project. Family, this is going to be a little bit different because the reason why I said this is going to be different is we're going to unpack this from more or less how I would literally approach this. I want to give you a real life case study in a sense of where you can take this and implement it in your day to day. But I will use a caveat. I will use something that most people won't be transparent with you about. But you're going to have to stay to the end, unfortunately, to catch what that transparency is. Because I know right away you want to skip through the 8 points and try to get to the end. But I promise you, going through these points are really going to help you navigate how to deal with a stakeholder or stakeholders that they're supposed to deliver something to you and they're not doing it on a timely manner. So I set this up in a different way, as I stated earlier. And how it's set up is I set it up as meeting number one, meeting number two, meeting number three, and meeting number four. And I already know what you're thinking because I have an intelligent family. Is like, man, you're giving a lot of chances. Yes, you want to do your very best to give that stakeholder or stakeholders every opportunity possible. But there does come a line. There comes a point where enough is enough, and you do have to take a strong stance and do something about it. So we're going to walk through each one of these points, and then we'll take it from there. First point is open up the lines of communication. What does that actually look like? First of all, you want to schedule a private meeting with that stakeholder. So what I would normally do is I will set up, and this is me. This is the first meeting. I call this the clarification and understanding meeting. So I need to get clarification and an understanding of what is going on. Hey, stakeholder, could you talk to me? And I may even dig personally and say, is there something going on at home? Because a lot of times, family, what would happen is that we already jump to conclusions of why this stakeholder is not delivering, meaning that we're saying, well, they understood the job, they understood the duty, they should have delivered this to us already. But we need to understand about digging deeper. I always tell you that it's important to build relationships. So when you build relationships with stakeholders, you have that opportunity to open up that door as far as personally, as something going on personally at home, to understand why hasn't this stakeholder delivered. And you're not trying to place blame. You're trying to first capture a understanding. Once you capture an understanding of why this particular stakeholder is not delivering, then we move on to step number two, or what I say, point number two. By the way, thank you so much, family, for watching today's episode. Boy, does it mean a lot to me. It means a lot to me because of the fact that you've taken the time out of your day, out of whatever you were doing, to lock in and watch today's episode. I also ask, though, while you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe and like button. It doesn't bite back. All it does is just add more value by me being able to produce more videos. Oh, by the way, we also have two things I want you to be on the lookout for if you haven't already signed up: is a newsletter as well as the school, the Magnetic Project Manager School. Definitely want you to check that out. And all that is basically I wanted to create an area of like-minded individuals that really are passionate or really like this thing that I call, or that we call, project management, that I hope that you fall in love with that like the way I fell in love with it. All right, let's move on to point number two. Point number two, again, we're still under the clarification and understanding. Let's identify the obstacles and offer support. What does that look like? We're asking open-ended questions to uncover any obstacles that they're facing. Like, listen, they may be working on multiple projects, and where they're getting pulled in what a direction more, and they're having to show up there because that project may have become a priority over the other projects. So that's why it's important to ask open-ended questions. Don't ask questions that you're going to get a yes or no response from, because it's not going to help you or the actual project at all. And all you're going to do is walk away frustrated. I always tell you, frustration comes from what? a lack of expectation, or an expectation that has been remixed in a sense, meaning that we had a certain expectation when we had the kickoff meeting, when I assigned the task to you, that these are the tasks that you said that you'll be able to do to deliver. Now, my expectation is you're going to deliver on those. I become frustrated when you're not actually delivering those items. So we must understand by asking open ended questions to understand what is actually going on. Point number three. Point number three is clarify expectation and responsibility. Again, we need to bring those tasks back up and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Stakeholder, you said that you were going to deliver these tasks. Let me reiterate what we discussed and what was the importance of delivering them and how it affects the rest of the project, and kind of walk that stakeholder through those pieces, and help them understand how important their contribution is to the project. I think that's another thing we forget as project managers, especially new project managers, because you may get into the whole task oriented aspect of things, that you got to understand these are people just like you are a person. So you want to lead with respect by all means. You don't want to lead with anything else but respect. Now, when that respect is diminished, then we move on to our next steps in the progress. But for now, what I'm saying is lead with respect, and just reiterate to the stakeholder that what their role is on there and what the expectation that the team and yourself have of them. Point number four. Now we got to a point where we're at point number four. Now we're going to have a second meeting. The second meeting is, I call it my verification and commitment meeting. What does that mean? So we're basically going to say, hey, I just wanted to follow up on the meeting that we've had, and I would like to set up regular meetings with just you and I to make sure that I can understand where you're at and you can understand how what you're doing is going to affect the project long term. And so I want to make sure you understand the reason why we're pushing so hard to actually make this happen, and hold that stakeholder accountable. Again, reiterate that, and I'm going to have to hold you accountable for what we discussed here and making it happen. Now, I also want to make sure that we understand this, and I'll get to that point too, because I know what you're thinking. Because again, I have an intelligent family out there that you're thinking of this one point, and you know I'm not going to leave you out and forget about you. I got you. All right, so we'll move on to point number five. Point number five: we want to negotiate tasks and maybe reprioritize. Maybe this is too much on the stakeholder. And if it is, we need to maybe reprioritize the task. So if there's a way that things that we can push in the project, which I'm not a big fan of, but again, it depends on the stakeholder. There's a lot of dependencies on this. But one of the major things is, one of the things, if I make the decision to reprioritize a task, I'm looking at the bandwidth of that stakeholder. And that's a conversation. That's why that first conversation is really going to be very important to you, family, because that's going to tell you a lot of what's going on that may not be being discussed with you personally. And so what you want to do is try to uncover that. By uncovering that, then maybe you can create some flexibility for that stakeholder so they can stay aligned with the project and keep up with the project. And it may, you just because you have to move some things around, it will open up the door again for that stakeholder. So it's letting them know, hey, I'm being flexible, even though this may or may not hurt the project, and we don't know that just yet. So again, project manager, if you make that decision to reprioritize a task, and make sure you've done your homework completely. That is not going to mess up anything else. All right, let's move on to point number six. This is the one I know you've been waiting for. This is the one that I know you've been thinking for. And you know, when we do these type of points, we do what? Message. Yes, this is a message. Documentation is going to be conversation. Listen, meetings from the meetings we've had with this stakeholder, we need to be documenting. We need to be recapping it and sending it out to that actual stakeholder, because what you don't want to happen is that you get in a situation where the stakeholder and you talk to the stakeholder and they're like, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to have been doing. And you're like, well, we talked about it on this date and we talked about it on. No, documentation beats conversation. You want to document the conversation, ensure that they understand and they have and they are aligned with what you're doing there. Because If there's no alignment there, it doesn't matter how much you talk to them, it just won't work. So document that conversation and the conversations you've had with that particular stakeholder. Point number 7. So you've done all of that. You've met with the stakeholder multiple times. You've ensured that they understood what the ask is of them, what the expectation is with them. This step is, I call it my escalation step, and this is where we escalate, because even if you take the PMP exam, one of the major questions is going to ask you is, after it asks you the question, then it's going to say, what should the project manager do, or what would the project manager do? Because the project manager is responsible for leading the project. So before you escalate, you have to do everything that's within your power, I should say, to be able to ensure that when you go to escalate, you got everything lined up, you have the documentation lined up, you have the conversation from which you extracted from when you had that conversation, that you extracted from the meetings with that stakeholder, because you at this point you've done everything you can do. Now we need to go talk to the stakeholder manager. If you have a PMO, maybe you go and talk with the PMO. But for me, how I would do it was talk to the manager. I would set up a one-on-one meeting with the manager, and I'll say, hey, listen, the stakeholder that you have assigned to this, they're not delivering. I've had multiple meetings. Here are the notes from the meetings, and we need to do something. And listen to the vocabulary that I'm using. I am using the words we, not hey you or I. No, we need to do something. So what do you propose? Wait, before you propose something, this is what I recommend. And I would list out 3 things, even like one of the things I would use, because I want to make sure these are things, family, that you can use today if you wanted to. First thing I would say is, hey, won't we basically, you and I get on the phone with this stakeholder to figure out what is actually going on. Or number 2, will you connect with the stakeholder and you circle back with me and you let me know what is going on here. And then third and finally is basically, if this is a stakeholder and maybe something is happening at home, or something is he's just the bandwidth is, they just don't have enough because they're being prioritized on every project, meaning that your project that you are pushing and you had to escalate to their manager, meaning that maybe they got caught up in another project and just lost train of thought over here. Whatever the thing is, finally just saying, hey, maybe this stakeholder is just not going to be the one that's going to work for us. And that, at that point, now you go to your project sponsor and you escalate it to the project sponsor and say, hey, these are all the things that I've done. I've met with the person individually on multiple occasions. We've talked through it. They said they were going to do it. They made the commitment. Here's the documentation. I met with the manager. They told me the same thing, and nothing is happening. I need your help to step in to assign us a new to be able to get us a new resource, or we're just going to have to work with the current resources that we have there and double up. Now here's the thing. I told you if you stay to the end, I have something really special for you. That all sounds good in theory. Have I actually done that? Absolutely. I've done it 110%. But there's been situations where I've done all of those steps and the stakeholder was still on that project. Now, the question to you is, well, what do you do, ED, if you're in that situation? I have to be honest with you. I wish I could tell you something that was very elaborate, that'll really arrest your attention to make you say, well, yeah, that sounds good, but I'm going to meet, you know how I do, family. I'm very transparent and I want to be upfront with you. You have 2 options. Option number 1 is continue to deal with that stakeholder, and they may be on another project that you work. Option 2 is to say, if that stakeholder is going to be on that project, on any future projects that you're going to be leading, you don't want any part of it. And probably if you do take that approach, you're probably going to land on option 3, which is you have to probably leave the organization, which is sad, because especially if you like the current stakeholders that you're working with or you've worked with before, it's kind of sad that it happens. But you can't sit there and expect a change and a change is not happening, and then you're frustrated because no one is doing anything about it. But you have power to do something. Why did you even go after new project manager to get that CAPM? Or why did you even start studying this thing that I love, that I hope you fall in love with, called project management? You have to build a case up and just continue to work on your skill sets so you can make the jump if you want to leave the organization or work in a different department as well. Like if you were working in applications, maybe you go over to infrastructure. So family, don't just feel like you're pigeonholed or you can't make no moves because of poor stakeholders. Unfortunately, you're going to experience it. I've experienced it multiple times. I've experienced it as a beginner all the way up even till now. So it's not going to go away, family. But there's things that you can do about it, and I hope one of these things that I pointed out today will help you on your journey in this thing I call project management. Until next time, I'm out.